By the end of 2025, the United States had committed over $100 billion in aid to Ukraine, a staggering figure that signals more than just financial support. It marks a deep American commitment to a conflict far from its own borders. The war in Ukraine, sparked by Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022, quickly became a defining moment for the 21st century. At the center of this global drama is the United States, whose decisions have shaped the war and the future of international order. This is a story about power, policy, and consequences. America's role is about more than weapons or money. It's about why a superpower chose to get so deeply involved in another nation's fight for survival. The U.S. saw Russia's aggression as a direct challenge to the principles of sovereignty and international law. Washington's response sent a message to allies and adversaries alike. Without American support, Ukraine might not have withstood the initial Russian onslaught. The U.S. became the principal architect of the international coalition supporting Kyiv, organizing sanctions, rallying allies, and providing critical military hardware. This engagement transformed the conflict and raised questions about the limits of American power and the risks of escalation with a nuclear-armed Russia. The stakes could not be higher. We'll explore the layers of America's role in the Ukraine war, the goals that drove U.S. policy, the actions taken, and the evolution from emergency aid to a long-term strategy. The story is complex, filled with successes, setbacks, and unintended consequences that continue to unfold. This is a look at how one nation's choices are reshaping the world. The war in Ukraine is not just a regional conflict. It's a test of American leadership, and its outcome will echo for decades. From the start, the U.S. aimed to ensure the survival of a sovereign, democratic Ukraine, not just out of idealism, but as a strategic imperative. If Russia could invade and annex a neighbor without consequence, the entire international system would be at risk. U.S. policymakers saw Russia's actions as a dangerous precedent that could embolden other authoritarian regimes. Defending Ukraine meant defending the principle of global order. Another key objective: deter further Russian aggression. The invasion was seen as the culmination of years of Moscow's hostile actions, including the annexation of Crimea and interference in Western elections. The U.S. and its allies aimed to impose such a high cost on Russia that it would reconsider future aggression. Weakening Russia's military and economic capacity was central to this strategy. Beyond Ukraine, America wanted to preserve and strengthen the Western liberal order, built on alliances, international law, and shared democratic values. Russia's invasion was a direct assault on that foundation. By leading a united response, the U.S. demonstrated the strength of its alliances, especially NATO. The conflict became a test of Western resolve. These three objectives, defending Ukraine, deterring Russia, and reinforcing the Western order, formed the bedrock of American policy. A free Ukraine would mean a strategic defeat for Russia and a stronger, more unified NATO. These goals guided every decision in Washington, from weapons shipments to sanctions and diplomacy. The policy was complex, but the underlying purpose was clear. America's involvement was about defending the rules that keep the world stable. America's support for Ukraine has centered on massive military aid. Without sending U.S. soldiers into combat, the U.S. provided the tools for Ukrainians to fight, from ammunition and body armor to advanced weapons like Javelin missiles and HIMARS rocket systems. This military assistance became the lifeblood of Ukraine's defense. Alongside military aid, the U.S. led a global effort to impose unprecedented economic sanctions on Russia. The goal: cripple Russia's war machine by cutting off revenue and technology. Sanctions targeted major banks, state enterprises, and Putin's inner circle, freezing hundreds of billions in assets and restricting access to critical tech. This economic warfare aimed to make Russia's war effort unsustainable. Diplomacy was the third pillar. U.S. diplomats built and maintained a broad international coalition, using forums like the United Nations to isolate Moscow. Diplomacy also managed the risks of escalation, keeping lines open with Russia to avoid direct conflict. These three tools, military aid, sanctions, and diplomacy, formed America's arsenal of influence. The strategy: support Ukraine and pressure Russia, without direct U.S. military involvement. This approach allowed decisive action while minimizing American casualties. It demonstrated a new model of 21st century warfare, where support and logistics can be as critical as boots on the ground. The impact on the battlefield and global economy has been undeniable. In the war's early weeks, American policy was defined by urgency, preventing Ukraine's immediate collapse. Emergency aid rushed in. Javelin and Stinger missiles, easy to use and quick to deploy, helped Ukraine blunt Russia's initial assault. As Ukraine defended Kyiv and pushed back, it became clear the war would be long. U.S. strategy shifted from short-term aid to a long-term plan for sustained support. Ukraine needed more than defensive weapons. It needed the capacity for large-scale offensive operations. The U.S. provided heavy artillery, armored vehicles, and advanced air defense systems. The goal evolved from survival to victory. This shift required new training and logistics. Ukrainian soldiers trained on Western systems in Germany and Poland, while a sophisticated supply network kept weapons and parts flowing. The U.S. commitment transformed Ukraine's military along NATO standards. By 2024, American strategy matured into a long-term containment policy, helping Ukraine win and ensuring its future security. This included discussions about post-war security guarantees and reconstruction. The U.S. signaled its commitment was enduring, not temporary. This shift demonstrated America's resolve and locked it into a protracted confrontation with Russia. The implications will last for years. America's support became a cornerstone of Ukraine's survival and transformation. The U.S. has wielded immense power in Ukraine without a single American soldier firing a shot. This is the essence of a proxy war, arming, funding, and training Ukraine to counter Russia. American intelligence, real-time satellite imagery, and signals gave Ukraine a decisive edge, enabling precision strikes and outmaneuvering a larger foe. Advanced weaponry like HIMARS, combined with intelligence, changed the war's dynamics. The U.S. also unified allies, leading the Ramstein meetings to coordinate aid from over 50 countries. This leadership amplified America's influence and presented a united front. But indirect involvement is a delicate balancing act, providing enough support for Ukraine to win, but not so much as to provoke a wider war. It's a high-stakes game of geopolitical chess. One major gain for the U.S. has been the revitalization of NATO. Russia's aggression reminded the alliance of its core mission, prompting increased defense spending and the historic entry of Finland and Sweden. American leadership was reaffirmed, rallying allies and organizing aid. This sent a powerful message of deterrence, especially to China, but the costs are real. Tens of billions in aid have fueled political debates and deepened divisions at home. The long-term commitment to Ukraine is contentious, straining U.S. politics and resources. America's involvement has also heightened global tensions, especially with Russia, and strained relations with countries in the global south. Many see the conflict as a European problem, more concerned with its impact on food and energy prices. The world is more fragmented and multipolar. The gains are real, but so are the pains. For America's closest allies, especially in NATO and Eastern Europe, U.S. action in Ukraine reaffirmed its security commitments. Countries like Poland and the Baltics see American leadership as their shield against aggression, deepening trust and transatlantic bonds. In contrast, Russia and China portray U.S. involvement as a proxy war and an attempt to weaken Russia. Beijing echoes Moscow's narrative, accusing the U.S. of fueling conflict instead of promoting peace. Many nations in the global south remain neutral, reluctant to take sides, and more concerned with economic fallout than geopolitics. They often view the war as a distant power struggle and resent being pressured to choose. These differing perceptions matter. They affect America's ability to build coalitions and achieve foreign policy goals. The view from Warsaw is vastly different from Beijing or New Delhi. The war has exposed and deepened global divides. How the U.S. is perceived, defender of law or instigator of conflict, shapes its soft power. The world is watching, drawing very different conclusions. America's image is on the line. The war in Ukraine has accelerated a new era of great power competition. The conflict has solidified battle lines between the democratic West and an emerging axis of authoritarian states led by Russia and China. The era of post-Cold War cooperation has given way to intense strategic rivalry. The war's economic impact, sanctions, energy shocks, and disrupted supply chains has exposed global vulnerabilities. Countries are rethinking dependencies, leading to economic fragmentation and competing blocs. There's a renewed focus on military power worldwide, with nations like Germany and Japan boosting defense spending. The war has shown that hard power still matters. The inability of the UN Security Council to act decisively has raised questions about global institutions. America's leadership is both challenged and reaffirmed. The world that emerges will be different, and the U.S. role is being redefined in real time. America's role in the Ukraine war is a defining test of its power, principles, and place in the world. By supporting Ukraine, the U.S. drew a line in the sand, declaring that wars of aggression in Europe would not go unchallenged. This strategy, massive aid without direct intervention, showcased both strengths and limits of American power. It revitalized alliances and reasserted leadership, but also created domestic strains and global tensions. The consequences extend far beyond Ukraine, shaping a fractured global order. The war has accelerated trends toward great power competition and economic de-risking. The final outcome remains uncertain, but the impact is already clear. America's choices will be judged by their long-term results: a stable Ukraine, a secure Europe, or a more divided world. What's certain is that this conflict is a crucial test of U.S. leadership. The decisions made today will echo for decades, defining America's role in the world.